We have plenty of folks who are coming on the call, and it's a good day. You'll have to excuse my headphones. Today happens to coincide with nap time at my house, so I am trying to be just a little more conscious of all the other sounds that are going on. We are going to do this sort of roundtable style and have a lot of discussion today. We've got a couple of talking points that hopefully we can group around and figure out what's going on in everyone's mind, and hopefully bring some ease to how folks are feeling, and give some creative ideas about what's going on. I think Cherian is hopefully going to have some great insights as our fellow master trainer, and maybe give a quick introduction of, if this is your first time as a Fundraising Institute participant, what we're doing and how we're doing it, and why we switched today from being about boards and governance 1 to our topic at hand. Cherian, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. So, obviously the gigantic elephant in the room is all of the things that we're dealing with COVID-19 and the economic volatility that's happening right now. So we thought, first of all, that your priority would not be on boards, and anything we talked about with regard to boards and governance wouldn't really stick. But where we could lean in and be a little bit more helpful would be in the process of talking through some of the challenges that we are collectively facing with regard to the pandemic, and also thinking through some of the economic challenges that we will face in the future or are currently facing, both as organizations, but as a larger economic situation. So just as a way of introduction for those of you who are on the call but have not participated with the Des Moines Fundraising Institute before, Eric and I had a cup of coffee a few years ago now, it seems like forever ago, and said, one of the challenges that we face as a community is figuring out how to provide low cost but effective training to frontline fundraisers. And so what we've done over the last almost year and a half now is hold monthly meetings where we have better lunches than the ones we're probably having right now, and talk about what's working in the fundraising space, and get to share what each other is doing, and some challenges and opportunities in that area. So when we knew that we would have some challenges even getting together today, we thought, what would be the best thing for our Fundraising Institute family to kind of think through? And part of this is really for us to get together and just connect with one another as people, and share what's going on in our organizations, and also to just reassure one another. So that's just where I want to start and say the same things that I've told my team internally at DMPA, which is, this isn't The Walking Dead. We're not all going to become zombies. It does seem really bad right now, and that's not to minimize people getting sick or dying in this instance, but the reality is that this will pass. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it will end. And so there are kind of two elements of our conversation today based upon that. One is, what do we do in the meantime? And then what do we do after it's over? So the language that I used on a webinar earlier this week felt like a year. So earlier last week, I don't know what's happening. The language that I used last week in a webinar was BCAC. So before Corona, after Corona is the world that we live in now. I just got off a call with another fundraiser, and I said, the thing that you need to remember is that everything that you planned for is now either useless or wrong. So if you needed toilet paper, now's a good time to pull out that fundraising plan or your strategic plan, because that's what it's good for right now. And if you're working from home, or even if you're in the office somewhere, now is a great time to start planning, executing some level of planning for what you will do now, but also what you will do once we come out of this. So do we want to Do we want to start talking about resources or hop into temperature taking?
Any chance, could we do just like very quick intros, and I will set the order sort of left to right on how videos show up on my screen, and we'll start off with Sonia, who will say her name and her organization and title, and then privately, I think we'll do just sort of a quick temperature taking. If you have the chat function available on your right-hand side, rather than sending it to everyone, if you just want to send it to me, and let me just have an idea of sort of panic at your organization so that we can decide what this conversation looks like. Panic as a whole, there are some organizations that I've talked to who are nervous about weeks, and some who are like, we're going to be fine for 9, 12 months, but it just feels really bad right now. So if you just want to give me sort of a brief overview privately of how nervous you are. If you want to do like a 1 to 10, or I don't know, something that gives us an idea of what's going on. But I'll let Sonia kick us off.
Sonia Ash with the Young Women's Resource Center, and my position is the Director of External Affairs.
Thank you. Sarah Wilson.
Hi, everybody. Sarah Wilson. I'm the Development Director for On With Life.
Bridget.
Bridget Porto. I am with YES, Youth Emergency Services and Shelter, and I'm the Community Relations Manager, which is fundraising and more.
As is the case, like usual. Clara.
Hey, I'm Clara Bergen with Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity, Director of Advancement, working mostly with individual donors.
Great. Christina.
I am the Events Manager and Development Coordinator at Children's Cancer Connection.
Sarah, somehow you have my name under you, but that's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm Sarah Stephanie. I sent you all the emails today.
Awesome. Eric Rucker.
Hello, I'm Eric. I work at Simpson College in the chapel department, and I run a summer program for high school students. So I'm kind of managing that particular piece of Simpson College as an organization, but then also connecting it to the college's larger financial situation.
And then please pass the love.
Hi, sorry, it says that's my organization. My name is Jennifer Yulee Wells, and I'm the Executive Director.
Wonderful, thank you. And so the conversations that we have here today, we're going to keep them semi-private. Please know that you have the ability to have some candor. There are a couple of folks who have been part of our inner circle that we want to be able to share some of these insights with. They know the same thing, where we're trying to have candor, but also that we're not going to share everyone's secrets everywhere. So hopefully that sort of sets the stage for what we have going on. All right. Anyone want to chat at me sort of how good or bad they're feeling?
Introduce themselves, right?
What was that?
A few other people that didn't introduce themselves.
Oh, somehow we got sent to the side. Who do we have here? Megan. Oh, you're on mute. Hold on a second.
There we go.
There
There
you
you go. Sorry. My name is Megan Sayre, and I am the Development and Communications Director for Self Help International.
Great. Anybody else who's on my left or right? Oh, Cherian, introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, I'm Cherian. I work at Des Moines Performing Arts, and I work on the fundraising team there.
Great. And I'm Eric Heininger, Master Trainer here at the Des Moines Fundraising Institute and Managing Director of Eden Plus Fundraising Consulting. And so the experience that I've been hearing in the last week is sort of everyone and how they're feeling about annual fund, capital campaigns, cultivation, layoffs in many organizations with both program staff and what it feels like sort of in the development department. I think I'm going to write a post that says, do not get rid of your development team because you need them now more than ever. But hopefully that gets us going. All right. Cherian, you want to walk through a couple of starter ideas?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by sharing a couple of resources that have come out recently, just in case you missed them, so that you have them for whenever you do feel like doing some reading and kind of getting a better sense of what's happening. So the first is going to be specific, and I'm just going to throw these in the chat, and you can just copy them down and go to them. So our friends at Bloomerang, who we've talked about before, have started to compile some resources on COVID-19 and fundraising through the COVID-19 challenge. And so as you know, face-to-face meetings are pretty much eliminated at this point. So a lot of people have moved to email, to social media, to direct mail, if that's a move for you, whatever that looks like. So one of the things that's really, I think, particularly helpful is that Julia Campbell has shared a bunch of resources for social media in particular. Julia's just a good human. I'm on a call with her later today, and she's going to be producing some more resources, but you can go to her website directly and download some additional resources if social is the appropriate medium for you, depending on what your email uptick is and things like that. So a bunch of different resources there from Bloomerang. They're just trying those, it's not from them as much as it is just them collating resources throughout the nonprofit space, if you will. And then likewise, I believe that this is free to access, but the Chronicle of Philanthropy is doing something similar. Most of their stuff is articles, just talking about what's happening, not so much tactical. So the first one is more tactical. Here's what you do. Here's a template. I think someone, maybe Mark Phillips or someone, put together, here's a template for, what an appeal looks like during a time of the pandemic or whatever. But the Chronicle's got more articles and things like that for you. So those are some particular resources, and I don't want to be presumptuous and say, this is what you should do, because each of you have different organizations that have different strengths and weaknesses. What I will say, and what I have been saying to other nonprofits throughout the last few weeks, is that you should really lean into your strengths. So if you haven't done social before, or you haven't done direct mail fundraising before, now's not a good time to invent that wheel. Now's, in fact, a really, really bad time to kind of figure out how to build the train while it's going down the track. So instead, what I would say is, where have you had some level of success, and kind of lean into that success and go from there. I do know that there is also just a challenge of kind of figuring out what to do at this point. As Eric mentioned, there's a kind of a general range of, are we worried about, can we make it through the next few weeks or the next few months? So if you are at all worried, what I would say, everyone, there we go. Here is something that I've been recommending to every nonprofit, and that is the Small Business Association is offering guaranteed, and I'm going to say this word cautiously, and then I'm going to explain what that means. They're offering guaranteed loans to nonprofits. So the structure of any disaster relief loan program is that organizations can apply under an emergency declaration, and Governor Reynolds made that declaration over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I believe. And so as a result of that, any business or nonprofit in the state of Iowa is eligible to receive a guaranteed loan. Even if you would not receive a loan before, you would receive a loan. So businesses, the loan rate is 3.75%. Nonprofits, the loan rate is 2.75%. Under an emergency declaration, however, and specifically as this has been funded, many of the expenses that you would normally have are forgivable under the loan, meaning you would not have to pay back the loan. for things like payroll for employees under a certain amount, and for fixed debt expenses. So if you have a building that you're leasing, or if you have, like a copier lease, those types of things would be paid for under the loan and forgivable. Everything else has a deferred payment for a year. So if you get the loan in April, you would have until April of 2021 to start making payments, obviously then at that lower rate. So you'll want to decide, with your team, especially your executive team and your board, if this is right for you. What I would suggest to you, having done this already, is that the process of going through it is not easy. The website's getting pinged all the time, so it's slow to go through it. And then you have to have a certain number of forms and things like that to have ready to go. You can save on the way, so it's not a big deal. But I would get in line, because at a certain point, the sooner you are able to be presented with options, the sooner you can decide what is right for your organization. But if you're not in line, then you're kind of well behind the curve. So you get to decide whether or not you do it, but I just recommend getting in line, because it's at this point, there's, I want to say, $50 billion available through this program, but that's sort of changing daily. So if you're on the spectrum of we're worried about the next few weeks or the next few months, it does typically take about 3 weeks to get funded. So so just keep that in mind, depending on how that plays out for you. So any questions about either those resources or the SBA loan program? I'm not an SBA expert, but did go through the process over the weekend, and so I can answer some things, I think. All right. So moving forward, as we go through this roundtable, obviously appreciate everybody staying on mute so your chewing noises are not readily heard. But if you do want to say something, just actually wave at the screen and unmute yourself as we go through that. But so the next piece that we wanted to talk through is just, obviously every expert, including us, will tell you to keep fundraising through the crisis. So we wanted to talk through what that looks like, and kind of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and those types of things. So the number one thing that people have been talking about and sharing is that staying connected to donors is really important in this time of panic and crisis, and we would certainly agree with that. So just to kind of reference what we're doing at DMPA as an example, we last week pivoted all of our kind of marketing resources and our email, social media to something we're calling Project Joy. So we're sharing stories of hope and stories of, just fun things that make us smile and remind us of what the world will look like AC. And so that's happening on our social and through email and things like that. But we're also calling all of our donors individually, reaching out to them, just checking in how they're doing. There's no ask. So we're just following up with them, saying, do you have any questions about anything that's happening here and what we've sent out, or have you seen them? And just we're looking forward to seeing you again, that kind of thing. Eric?
How are you prioritizing top to bottom on that list?
We have 5 people on our team, and each person has their own priorities. So each person pre-existing had their own kind of portfolio, if you will, of people, and they're just going through them as much as they can. As we're not trying to, it's not a race to the finish kind of thing. So if somebody, one of the things that we know, and we shared in our conversations on, we have a Slack channel about things, is that at least with our organization, a lot of times people come to the theater because it avoids social isolation. So for our elderly donors in particular, this is an opportunity to see friends on a monthly basis and hang out with other people. So I have a portfolio of people. Most of them are older, and so those are the people that I'm reaching out to. We are any major gift donor that's specifically affected by what's happening with the organization right now does have a kind of unique priority level. So I need to explain to a major donor, this program that we were doing is going to change, it's going to morph, and we're going to do this differently kind of thing. So that's the only kind of separation there in terms of priority. Any other kind of questions, feedback? Yeah, Eric.
Grant, so question I'm wrestling with is, I heard you say recommending doing personal follow-up with donors. And so, of course, we have sort of a group of recurring donors or donors that we already have strong relationships with. But I'm in this kind of strange window where normally at the end of the school year, we run a program June through April. So we just canceled our, like graduation celebration this weekend. And that's a really important kind of watershed where the parents of the participants in our program see the impact, they're emotionally excited, and then, in the next month I'd make the first ask.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your thoughts about, I feel confident doing check-ins with recurring donors, but there's this sort of catch-22 where I feel like the longer I wait to check in with the people who I was going to ask for the first time, their enthusiasm is going to wane. But I also feel like the closer to now I ask, there might be more of a scarcity model, and they might be more scared to commit to donating. So I'm curious what you say about people, in this unique window where this is where I'd normally be asking them for the first time.
Sure.
For gifts.
I don't know that I have great insight. The only thing that I would say is that we are doing acquisition. Our organization's doing acquisition right now. I think there's an opportunity to kind of craft a narrative about why gifts at this time are important. And what everyone will tell you, including myself, is that the risk of offending someone right now is relatively low. Everyone knows that everyone needs help. And so just remember that everybody gets to choose whether to respond, but that was true BC as well. So the meaningful part of your question that I don't have a great answer to is how do you generate that kind of momentum or that excitement? And I don't know if, video or, narrative storytelling or something like that can get to that point in the right way, but it might just be completely and fundamentally different. What I would just stress to you and to everyone else is that the inclination to shrink back at this time and to decide for the donor that they're not ready to give is not the wisest choice of action. So one of the things that I'm sharing with our board in a call later today is that we have sent out our renewal letters and we will send out our acquisition letters because we are seeing an organic, that was going to happen no matter what, but we are seeing an organic outpouring of support among our donor community. We get an emailed list of people who are giving online every morning. We've seen $10,000 in gifts this past week, including people upgrading their gifts. So people are making the decision without any impetus from us to make gifts, which means that there are many more people out there who are waiting for someone to say, hey, will you make a gift? Will you help out? I was in a Twitter exchange with some friends and I was saying right now the overarching narrative is that the most philanthropic thing that you can do is buy local, which is a fascinating social structure that has been created, but it has been created based upon the vacuum of nonprofit language right now. So some nonprofits are leaning into this conversation saying we need food, we need, access to medical care, those types of things. They're continuing to fundraise, right? They're continuing to do those things and doing so appropriately and thoughtfully, which I think is the important caveat there. But I guess I would just say think through how to make that meaningful, but I wouldn't stop from asking them.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah. So there's individual donors, there are institutional donors, many of whom are also now working at home and potentially trying to figure out what does their funding cycle look like. And I don't know, Eric, do you have, Heininger, do you have any other thoughts there? Oh, Christina, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just had I don't know if this is helpful to you, Eric, at all, but we just did we just sent an email out on Saturday We had all of our staff send in pictures from home, and we put together like a cover photo that said, you know, hello from home. And it was all of us with little signs, with our pets, with our kids. And in that email, we basically said, like, we don't know what this time looks like. We canceled a lot of our, we do programs for children with affected by childhood cancer. And we said, you know, we don't know what this time looks like. We don't know if you knew this or not, but we're not government funded. We're 100% donor funded. We've used grants and corporations to fund what we do. So you guys are important now more than ever. And then we gave them, we sectioned out 4 ways that they could specifically help us right now. And I think for us anyway, I think it's been beneficial because, you know, with a food bank, it's easy to say like, oh, they need food right now. With our organization working with children with cancer, it's kind of like, I wouldn't know if I didn't work here, I wouldn't know what we needed. And so we list, you know, very specifically, and then with links to, here's a link to our web store. If you want to purchase some apparel during this time, here is a link to our peer-to-peer fundraising page. If you want to start a fundraising page, if you're not able to give at this time, but you can get others to give. So I think we just sent that out on Saturday morning. We thought it'd be a good kind of weekend start. We wanted them to see our faces as people. I think most people know we're a very small staff, but to, you know, see us in our element and then kind of go from there. So I don't know if that would be something that's helpful too, especially with, you know, hey, we had to cancel this. Here's what you can do to help us move forward. We've canceled every program. We have immunodeficient kids, so we can't really have any programming. So just giving people ways. We sent it out to every family, donor, volunteer in our database. And so we're hoping that that can start to make that wave, and then, you know, updating our Facebook cover page to that same picture and saying, you know, here's a blog post of how you can help us. So I don't know, there's just something we've been trying to figure out as well, but maybe that's helpful in your instance as well. So.
That's great. Any other similar strategies or strategies that you all want to share about how you're staying connected to donors, or how you're thinking through some of those things or challenges that you're facing? Bridget.
We are kind of struggling right now because our duck derby would be scheduled for May 2nd, and that's our biggest fundraiser. And just in general, yes, because of how it's structured is kind of in crisis right now. The kids aren't able to go on their outings. They are going a little stir crazy. Just think of how everyone is feeling, and then bring that up about 100 notches because of their trauma backgrounds. And then to add on that we were short-staffed in terms of the direct care workers before. And so then to have, you know, the $11 an hour workers calling in sick or getting sick and not being able to come in. So it's definitely a crisis mode. So I'm not getting a ton of direction on how to communicate. We definitely can't hold the duck derby. We're going to have to do it either just completely online or virtual, but I'm not getting a ton of direction of, do we say something on social media while we're figuring that out? We need to communicate with our sponsors. We need to do all of these things. So I'm just kind of in a holding pattern, which is, I would say, frustrating for me. Yeah. I don't know that any of you can give me advice. Right. So what I've been doing so far is just kind of doing, not addressing the duck derby, but just kind of posting mental health things from obviously trusted sources on our RES page. And then, you know, not trying to bombard our CEO, but because that's who I report to right now, but just kind of like, hey, do we have an idea of what we're going to do? Just because here are all the people I need to communicate with.
Yeah.
Regarding next steps.
For
So
what it's worth, I think CEOs at this point are looking for what is the biggest fire that I need to put out. And Jen, maybe you can jump in on this one from that perspective. But I know, at least from what I'm hearing, there are too many burning fires, and I got to make sure that I'm hitting the one that I think is the most urgent or the most likely to spread. I don't know what good analogy I have right now, but I would imagine that I don't mean to commit to intentions or anyone else, but I imagine that one of the things that's happening is that you're probably not getting direction because it's too far away and it doesn't seem like it's a big consequence. What I would suggest is just positing it as do you see any problem with me going ahead and doing X? Like, so what I said to our leadership team is, if anybody sees a problem with our team calling all the donors and just checking in with them, no asks, just checking in with them, see it, just let me know and we can work through those details. But instead of kind of asking for an answer, posing, here's what I'm going to do, let me know if you have a problem.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's such a big part of our budget that, yeah. And a lot of these
I would echo that too, to that strategy is because 2 weeks ago as a ED, maybe I should have seen this coming. I didn't. And so my trajectory was incredibly different. And so right now, trying to do there's all these different hats, right? Like programming scrapped. We've had to scrap all these things. Fundraising's a whole nother thing. And so it's one of the things our staff has talked about is like, sorry if you can't hear me, my internet connection is unstable. We need all hands on deck. So bring ideas to the table, and it's easier from where I stand to veto things, which isn't really how it's working, but to be like, no, that doesn't work, than to try to come up with more ideas.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bridget, have you had a chance to talk directly to your lead sponsors?
We talked to the top 3, so like our presenting sponsor and then the 2 below that, and all 3 of them were like, we're completely on board with whatever you need to do. But then there are probably 20 others that we haven't communicated anything with until we figure out like a date if we are doing an online thing, because we know that they have enough going on right now. But what I don't want to do, I'm also in charge of the e-newsletter. What I don't want to do is put out an e-newsletter to people and not address the Duck Derby, because that was in my draft of it, that was the main thing, because we usually ask for volunteers, we ask for sponsorships, we ask for all of the things. So basically I'm holding on to the e-newsletter right now. I have a spreadsheet of all the things that are on hold right now because of the Duck Derby. Mm-hmm. So it's, yeah. And it's on her radar because it is such a huge portion of our funding. But I do know that things at the shelter are crazy. So I don't want to ask her for things at the moment, but I can't move on 100 different things because of that.
So just to kind of overgeneralize Bridget's issue for all of us, including Jen and anybody else who's in an executive position, I was joking with my CFO a couple of weeks ago and she was saying that there are no laws in the apocalypse. What's I think unique about this time is that you all, whether you are in leadership or not, have an opportunity to come up with a solution and to say, here's what I propose, and I'm going to come to you with the solution, and here's what is going to happen. Here's who's going to be responsible for X, Y, and Z. Ideally, it has little to no budget at this time, but be the people who own the seat in the room at the table and to say, here's what we're going to do, because this is the time to step up and say, I'm gonna send out this communication to these people, and this is what we're gonna do, and here's how we're going to. In Bridget's example, here's how we're gonna do the duck derby. Here's what it's gonna look like, and because at this point, there's no better answer, right? There's no one that's saying here's the right answer, and we're gonna get back to the right answer. Every answer is different now.
Yeah, like Cherian said at the beginning, if you had a plan before, it's now wrong. So you're starting from zero, and now you get to create it from the start. And that's, I think, really helpful. The problem is today you have zero. And so like a one-page memo that outlines, the 10 bullet points, and then you sort of like build out from there. But you do need to start from scratch and build it out and have a plan. And often the first plan sticks. So if you have sort of thought through it and have a good idea about what's going on, hopefully you can then use that to guide the conversation and create a lot of value, because you've been thinking about it 24/7. If you are an executive who is also responsible for all the staffing and all the program management, it's then like, it's not what they've been thinking about 24/7. So if you can sort of add your expertise to it, I think it would be very much appreciated.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
So do you have your hand up?
Oh, we have to have our, oh gosh.
Oh, no, it's okay. And we'll get, Megan, we can get back to you. Sonia, did you want to jump in?
Well, I was just so we wound up we're rescheduling our gala that was supposed to be on April 18th and had the big conversations a couple weeks ago about whether or not we needed to go virtual or reschedule or all those big questions. And I think that one note, and if you're able to put together thoughts and plans that you can present to your CEO, a big message is that the earlier that you can get some kind of plan rolling for whatever the change is going to be, the better, especially if you're going to try and do virtual. That takes its own whole massive set of planning and preparation. One of the bonuses is that, also speaking, like I do the designing for the child serve bubble ball every year. So speaking from the perspective of a volunteer who was like, I remember having all of these big questions about whether or not the event was going to be happening and wanting to know what role I would still have or what their needs still were. And so you probably still have a whole bunch of people who would normally be volunteers who are out there like ready to kind of follow any instructions or guidance you have on how they can continue to be involved. So there's an opportunity, if you do switch to something like Ultra, to take advantage of that mass of people who are at home waiting to help in some sort of way. But I think the big takeaway was like identify a plan as early as possible if you're able to, and then we tried to follow a pretty clear communication. It all happened within a day, but like earliest in the morning was communicating to staff and board, then communicating to all of our sponsors and communicating to all of our kind of attendees and donors or in-kind donors until that we reached the afternoon and the information went public. So that idea of waiting to get your newsletter message out until after you've gotten a chance to communicate something with your lead folks, I think they appreciate getting the heads up.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Megan?
Well, first I just wanted to say thank you for all of that, because I'm kind of in a similar position as Bridget, where we made the decision to cancel our spring gala, and that brings in about $50,000 to $60,000. But the problem we're having now is like, I've maybe suggested some solutions, and our CEO kind of wanted to go a different direction, but then we had to pull the plug on that plan. And so now we're in a weird holding pattern. And so that was kind of nice just to feel empowered again, to be like, okay, I'm just going to create a plan, and I'm going to kind of say like, we got to think of something fast. Like we've got to, be proactive about this. And I'm just wondering, for any of you, have any of you tried to approach donors and say, you know what, normally, through this event, we're able to raise like $50,000, and this is kind of what our need is right now. And just actually, being really upfront with your donors about the amount of money that you need to raise during this time of need.
I mean, as everyone who's been to the Institute before knows, I am the worst person to answer this question. So I'm going to go on mute and let you all answer. I have no answers to that, and not because it's a bad question, Megan. I just don't. I don't have experience with it. So
because I'm going to fill up some silence. I don't know if this is a great answer along the way, but hopefully it's inspires other ideas. Always, like Sonia mentioned, you've got volunteers and donors who are out there right now who are thinking about you. And I think it's not going to be helpful to try and push a square block through a round hole. Like, you're going to have to find what works for the people who are closest to you. And when I think about, I put on my donor hat, like, I like galas, but like in reality, I want the money to go to the mission. And so that's why I hate golf tournaments. And we should talk about golf tournaments too, because it's also that time of year. I think I would rather have some transparency about it than to, especially if it's an organization that I sit on the board of, or I've been on the board prior. I'd just like to know, like, are you okay? Are you not okay? Like, if I don't give in the next month, are you gonna like stop giving programming to all those kids or puppies or whatever, like, that I really care about? And if you're okay and you've got some runway there, like, be honest that, we're going to be in this for the long haul, but we are thinking about long-term strategies. But if you're sort of in a stuck spot and you're really panicking, you don't want to sort of tell everyone the sky is falling, but I think you need to say, like, today your gift goes further than ever. And we need you. And this is serious to us.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And it's, certainly not, we are very fortunate that we had some like larger legacy gifts the last couple of years, and then we put that away. And so we're okay for the near future, but just, like you said, losing $50,000 to $60,000 of revenue, like, that's the programs, like, that's the people we serve, like, that's going to impact our ability to deliver. And so just communicating that. And so, yeah, thank you.
I'm going to share something I just saw. For those of you that are in the health and wellness space, Delta Dental has opened up a grant cycle for emergency help if you're so inclined. Obviously, that doesn't apply to us, but I know that applies to many of you here on the call. So reach out to them. Hopefully, you have some context and things like that. The other thing to kind of think about, going back to there are no laws in the apocalypse, is that there's a level of forgiveness that occurs in this area. Not obviously, don't do anything bad, but or wrong or illegal or anything like that. But what I've told my team at this point is, we're checking in every day with one another, and then once a week as a group, and having a virtual happy hour. But you want to stay connected to your team and make sure that you all are kind of singing from the same hymnal, but that doesn't mean that you all need to be singing the same song. So you can let your people on your team or feel empowered at this moment to go do good things, especially good things that don't cost money, to stay connected to donors and connect donors to beneficiaries in appropriate social distancing kind of ways. So depending on what that looks like, there's kind of the sky's the limit in that regard. The other kind of thing to think through is your planning. Remember, I said that your strategic plan, your fundraising plan is not very useful anymore. The thing to kind of think through, as we have probably about 15 minutes here left, is what does the new normal look like? AC after Corona, and certainly as we see the economic fallout, however you think of that, and whatever you think that will whatever you think will happen as a result of that. I have very specific thoughts on that, but that's not for today. The new normal is probably going to be altered by the fact that many nonprofits have had a lot of eggs in one basket and relied on certain funding sources, whether it's a golf tournament or a gala or something, whatever else it is. So as you're innovating on what to do right now during the pandemic and how to alter your plans, as Sonia mentioned, to virtualize some events or something like that, does it make sense to say, we're going to virtualize this, or we're going to do it differently this time, but are we going to do this at all next year, right? Are we going to scrap this plan and start over from a completely new plan that doesn't involve, or that absorbs the risk of not being able to gather together for one reason or another? What does that look like, and how do we change that? In some respects, that's very easy, like not having a golf tournament and reaching out to people and saying, hey, this is the amount that we need to raise, and having a major gift program instead. For some organizations like ours, not gathering together is like the core of our business. So if we can't gather, we have way bigger problems. So I don't know that anybody has, if you have insight or ideas, or you're thinking through some of those things and want to share, now's a great time to do that with the rest of the group. But I would just pose that to you as an opportunity as well right now to say, we used to have this golf tournament, and we're not going to put ourselves in the position to rely on this golf tournament ever again. Because just for specificity's sake, the chance of the Principal Charity Classic happening are relatively remote, I would say, at this point. So
I think one of the things, I was talking to a faith-based organization this morning, and just to come back to sort of like the importance of each of your missions, let's not forget about that as an important cultivation step in what you're doing. And I was just trying to think, what are some of the craziest things that we can do right now that are a reminder of the mission, but also making sure that your donors are okay and that they see the mission, and crazy ideas that were thrown out. One, you probably have a ton of staff who are doing some different kind of work, like call through the list, do those sorts of things. But the idea of having someone, and specifically we were talking about having a priest show up in driveways of people who can't get out of the house right now and really should not get out of the house. But he could then call from his car and say, hey, I'm here with you. I'd like to pray with you about your family and what is bringing you angst today. And that's really unexpected. It really breaks the mold. He isn't actually sort of breaking any social distancing issues. And he spends most of his day in the car anyway, but it's just another opportunity to think creatively about how you can bring the mission to others.
For any of you that work with youth, like we do, our program team came up with the idea to do a letter exchange. So they were able to say I wanted to participate in this, and then they're provided with other families' addresses, obviously, of course, with their blessing to do that. And they are, we're starting that up this week so that they can continue to spread that around. But you could also, I think, somehow do that with, donors as well, or even that's us. It's a great time to do a lot of handwriting, notes, and just say, we're just thinking about you. Hope you're thinking about us, sort of thing. But we have just within the last couple of days, 10 families that have already said they wanted to do it, and they want to do it for multiple families, not just one family. So I think that's a really cool impact piece as well. That's still, our mission is to connect families. And so that's one piece that we can do while still not being face-to-face. So that's an idea as well.
Going off of that, if any of you are interested, on a side note, we just launched this morning a new campaign called Storms Don't Last Forever, and it's hashtag SDLF. And we have a bunch of resources and virtual programming we're offering online for parents, for educators, and for youth. So with that though, like my expertise, I'm a career teacher, I'm in higher education. And so on a good day for me, this fundraising piece was already really foreign, right? And the money piece, like it's really been a blessing, a miracle from the heavens above that we've gotten as far as we've gotten. So right now, I mean, for us, full disclosure, like we're a small org. We have probably another couple of months worth of expenses that we have saved. We don't have a giant endowment. We don't have a nest egg. Our board is doing an emergency meeting this week. And, you know, we've been talking to some of our funders, and I feel like we're headed in the right direction. So I didn't know exactly in terms of what I just shared with what we're doing, you know, to what Eric said. The only thing I could tell myself last week was just focus on the mission, like hopefully God willing, all the rest will fall into place. How can I message, or how can I leverage, or how do I, you know, what are good words to say with, because I do feel very proud of our staff because we worked through the weekend to create, I mean, we worked our tails off to create programming and, you know, opportunities. How do I use this to really build capacity with the people? Because we have a great following of thousands of people. Where do I go from here?
So, sorry, am I unmute or not? I'm not. Okay, great. So I'm just looking for an article that my friend Jim Langley posted, because I think it will really help with this and for other people as well, just kind of thinking through some of these issues. So the short answer is that there probably isn't necessarily a one right answer, but copy link to post. Here you go. The thing that I would caution everyone about is when everyone says keep fundraising, there's a difference between the fundraising approach of we're in trouble, we need your help, and how can you help us? Remember that what we talked about before over the set of courses that we've done is that fundraising is not about us as organizations. We use we language, we use you language for the donor, and ultimately go back to the fundamentals of when donors are giving, they are not giving to you as an organization, they're giving through you ultimately to a cause and to a beneficiary. So it is important, as Jim talks about in this article, that there is an essential difference in the words that you use to talk through. Is the thing that needs saving the organization, or is the thing that needs saving the cause or the beneficiary? And what I just got off the call with another fundraiser an hour ago, and I said, the thing to remember is that you do not want to encourage the donor to shrink back into safety. You want to open them back up into generosity. The reason why, frankly, the reason why we're doing this Project Joy thing is to remind donors of the joy that performing arts, that the theater brings them, that they have joy when they come into that space, and to lean into their best tendencies, not to draw themselves inward, right? So all of the stories that you'll see on our social media are stories of people finding ways to connect despite social isolation. That's kind of the core purpose. So when Jen, whether it's you or anybody else here on the call, what I would just super encourage you to do is frame the conversation. People are being generous all the time right now, right? There is an outpouring of generosity at this time, with helping out food banks, with helping out neighbors in need, with helping out the elderly. Like the whole point of social isolation is helping out other people, particularly elderly people. So we have this philanthropic spirit that is permeating society. It's just not happening at the level of money. So we need to embrace that and into the language of what else can you do to help? people in need? What else can you do to help a neighbor that is struggling? What else can you do to be the best self that you want to be? So one of the authors that I follow, her name is Bernadette Jiwa, and like I super fanboy every time she tweets at me and uses my name. But that's what makes her such a really great author. But she says these incredibly poignant things. And one of them is, this gives us an opportunity as a society to reset and to say, this is who we want to be as a society moving forward. And so just as a sort of at least final word of encouragement from me, this gives you an opportunity as a fundraiser, as an organization, to reset and to say, this is the best version of the organization that we can be, because we are starting from zero, and we are saying, how can we have conversations with funders that really empower them to be the best version of themselves, and to say, the thing that you care about the most is X, and we are going to figure out a way to collectively, together, build this thing and make it sustainable and figure it out. And Jen, at least to your point, what I would say to every leader is that it comes from a place of vulnerability, authentic vulnerability, and to say, honestly, I don't know what's happening. And that's what we're talking about with our funders and donors. We don't know what's happening. We don't know when we're going to open our doors again. We know that they will. We know that those doors will not permanently stay shut. And that's true for every single organization here. Those doors will not stay shut. They will open again. There will be people with need. And I end a lot of webinars that I do or talks that I do with this a vote from a guy named Rabbi Nathan. Whether it's actually him, the Babylonian from the first century or not, we're not really sure. But he says, never be afraid of work that has no end. And that is all of our work, right? There is no solution to hunger, to homelessness, to mental health. It's not like 100 years ago or 100 years from now, everyone's suddenly going to be healthy and wealthy and wise, and there won't be any problems in society. So the work that your organization is doing and the work that you're doing to move that further is super essential. Fundraising isn't going to go away. How you do it might change, but the why for your organization, but ultimately the why for the donor, is the thing that you have to come back to and share that through your messaging, whatever the form, whether it's social or email or face-to-face, whenever that happens again, or 6 feet away from each other, share the why of why that beneficiary needs the donor to partner with them to get that work done. Any other final last thoughts or parting wisdom?
I think Jen brought up a good point that you all have thousands of supporters, and it's just a matter of finding what they can do today. And yes, not all of them will have the cash to make revenues and, paychecks, and like that's scary and terrible, but they all are thinking about what they can do. And if you are at the top of their mind, they are more likely to make an interaction with you. So micro things that they can do, and this comes in two forms. One is sort of actions that they can perform to help you. If you have 1,000 people and, let's say it's social media and 10% of them see the post and then 10% of them actually take action, you still have 10